Hi everyone, I just want to do a video to try to explain my last video. Plus I have a lot of other things that I've been wanting to explain for quite some time that I want to try to get into. But at this point there's just so many things. It would probably take about 100 videos to try to explain everything. And so what I'm going to do is what I usually do, and that is to just work my way backwards from my last video and the last thing that I've been looking at, and then try to work back to some of the other things that I've been wanting to explain previously. And so what happened with my last video is I got inspired to do a video because of all the scriptures that come up in verse 18 or in Numbers that seem to indicate the year 2018 as being the time when God will pour out His Holy Spirit. Okay, but I also wanted to talk about this imagery right here, and you would think I found this image by looking on the map to see where Shittim is located. Because if you go back to Joel 3:18, which is just one of the scriptures that seem to talk about God pouring out His Holy Spirit in 2018, it says, "And it shall come to pass in that day that the mountains shall drop down new wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and all the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters, and a fountain shall come forth of the house of the Lord, and shall water the valley of Shittim." So you would think that I was just curious to see where the valley of Shittim is, but that's not actually how I found that image. Okay, I found that image by looking up this Hebrew word over here. Okay, and it was actually this image that I found first. I'll go ahead and enlarge it. Okay, this is the image that I found at first, and I know you probably can't see it very well because it's blurry for some reason, but it's showing where Shittim is located right here. You can see it says map of Shittim over here, and it's got this balloon mark over here showing where the valley of Shittim is. Okay, you can probably see it a little better with this image over here. It says Abel, Shittim, and then over here you have Jericho on the other side, and this is basically where Joshua crossed the Jordan River. Okay, so I probably wouldn't have thought much about this image over here if it wasn't for the fact that it was right next to another image that I've come across recently. I actually came across this image over here sometime around the Feast of Trumpets, and already had about 50 to 100 videos worth of information that I wanted to talk about concerning this image that I'll need to get back to before I came across this image. And so now I have about 100 videos worth of information to share concerning this image. Okay, so the reason I was looking at images of this word is because I was watching a video a few days ago, and they were talking about the word woman in the Bible, in the Old Testament, or this particular form of the word, which is the Hebrew word 5347. You can see it means female or woman. And in this video, they were basically portraying the woman or the female as being evil. And they pointed out that it comes from this word over here, which is another word. This word is the word nakab, and it means to pierce and perforate, to prick off, or to bore, or to blaspheme. And so they were pointing out that the word female actually comes from this word, and they were portraying the female as being evil, and that Satan created male and female, and that in God's kingdom there's no male or female, everyone's just neutral, and I don't agree with that at all. And so I was just looking at this word to try to understand why the word female would come from a word that means to pierce or to bore, and at the time I didn't really understand it. I think I do now. But that is the reason why I was looking at these images, and that's when that particular image came up. There's another image over here which was helpful in understanding. And so the first image that I saw that I told you about, this image right here, I saw around the time of the Feast of Trumpets, and like I said, I wouldn't have thought anything about this image if it wasn't for the fact that it was right next to this other image. And so I have a lot to share about this particular image of the Dead Sea and the Jordan River, and I have a lot to talk about. But I already had a lot to talk about this imagery over here, which is basically the kingdom under King David and Solomon. I'll go ahead and enlarge this image so you can see it better, so you can see how the Dead Sea, okay, this is about as large as I can get it, but you can see here that the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee are located within this larger image over here, and this shows the two kingdoms, the divided kingdom of Israel between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, but altogether this formed the entire kingdom under King David and King Solomon. Okay, you can see a more detailed image of it right here in this reference. This is the kingdom under David and Solomon, and as you can see, it goes all the way up to the Euphrates River. I had actually enlarged that to see what was there because it's kind of small, but there's another image. Okay, there's another image over here that says Israel's golden age, the story of Israel's rise into the golden age during the reign of David and his son Solomon, and then its disintegration into two separate kingdoms is a story of both triumph and bitter tragedy. And so it's showing the kingdom in this reference as well, and you see the different stages. Over here in the red is the territory of Israel before David became king, and then in the orange is the area conquered by David and inherited by Solomon, and then the golden area is the area under strong economic influence of Solomon. And so you can see this kingdom went all the way to the Euphrates River, and so that's very significant. And so I had a lot that I wanted to talk about, how the Euphrates River is connected to all of this. Of course, this is the cradle of civilization. This is where Adam and Eve were created by God in Genesis 2. Okay, so you have all these images of the cleaving together, starting with the city of David, which is basically Jerusalem. And so this would be the smallest image that I've seen. This basically comprises the Temple Mount, you see in this blue area over here, and then you have Ophel, and then the city of David, which is also referred to as, okay, well, it was originally referred to as Jebus. This is what David named the city when he conquered it from the Jebusites. It was first named Jebus. So you see a map of ancient Jerusalem over here. In this article, in this reference, you have the different stages under the different time periods of Israel's history, of the geography of Israel, and the city of David. Okay, but it was also referred to as Mount Zion. You can see from this image over here that it was also referred to as Mount Zion. So this is basically the earthly representation of New Jerusalem. Of course, it is all encompassed with the wall. And in Revelation 21, verse 17, it tells us that the wall is 144 cubits. So I believe the wall represents the bride. It of course encompasses the city of David and the temple. Okay, so just to give you some perspective, you can see that Jerusalem is in this green area over here, and then you have the Dead Sea in this area, and then you have this larger area that goes all the way to the Euphrates River, and within that you have the Dead Sea. But there's yet another image that's in between these two. Okay, and I'm not sure how I found this image exactly. I think it came up in some of the images that I was looking at of the Dead Sea and the crossing of the Jordan, which is something I want to talk a little bit more about. That apparently happened about here. But this particular image is an outline of the route from the Exodus under Moses, and then when Joshua took over the leadership, it's showing the route over here. And at its highest point, you see that this is at the waters of Merom. Okay, and that comes up in Joshua 11:7. It says the place which was the scene of Joshua's victory over Jabin and his confederates, commonly identified with Lake Hula in the upper part of the Jordan Valley, but with doubtful propriety. Josephus says that the camp of the allies was at Beroth in Upper Galilee, and that Beroth was not far from Kadesh, which is upon the summit of the Galilean hills. Okay, over here it says in Joshua 11:5, all these kings met together, and they came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to fight with Israel. So you basically had a confederacy that came against Israel. And then in verse 7, which makes 117, it says, so by the waters of Merom Joshua and his whole army came upon them suddenly and attacked them, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of Israel, who struck them down and pursued them all the way to Greater Sidon and Misrephoth-Maim, and eastward as far as the valley of Mizpeh. They struck them down, leaving no survivors. So this is Joshua getting victory over a confederacy that came against Israel. Okay, and this happened at the waters of Merom, which is at the highest point over here. You also have Bashan and Og over here, which is a type of Gog, or the Antichrist. And you also have Dan, which represents the Antichrist over here. And so this is basically how God is going to defeat the Antichrist army. Okay, and you had a similar confederacy that came against Israel that I've talked about before, that's talked about in Isaiah 7, where it also talks about the Revelation 12 sign, and in 2 Kings 18:17, where it says the king of Assyria sent the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and the Rabshakeh from Lachish with a great army against Jerusalem to King Hezekiah. And they went up and came to Jerusalem. When they had come up, they went and stood by the aqueduct from the upper pool, which is on the highway, to the fuller's field. And so I've talked about how there's the fuller's field over here, which is where you have the pool of Siloam. And I've talked about the tunnel or the aqueduct that was built by Hezekiah, which is mentioned over here as well. Also comes up in 2 Chronicles 32:30, which makes the numbers 23 frontwards and backwards. Okay, but this particular image was created by the route of the Exodus and Joshua conquest, and so I put that in as a search so I could get some other images of that, so that there's more than one reference. And you can see there's other images of that, like this one over here. You see it shows the same territory, because you always have to have 2 or 3 witnesses, and so you can see the area that was conquered over here, as well as the route of the Exodus. Okay, so now I've gone over all the images, and so what I want to do next is talk about each of the images individually, because I have a lot to share about each one, but I'll have to do that in the next video. Thanks for watching, and God bless you.